where those who perceive truth may strive to make others see.
A big, powerful America, and shoot them for what?
On that continent, we are trying to forge a new identity for which we need each other.
We talk about what is an infrastructure, what does it take to, what's being done about the infrastructure. We talk about a few historical cases of infrastructure failure, and when it comes down to how we are rated. We also talk about nonprofits and initiatives related to solving our infrastructure in any way, shape, or form. Thank you. Good evening, Blackbirds. I am Sleepy, your host for today's episode, or for today's report, and today's topic is going to be about the failing infrastructure. I'm sure you've kind of heard the peripheries behind our failing infrastructure. If anything, everybody's heard about Flint and what we can, and in terms of this report, in terms of shedding actual light, in terms of information that's readily available, I think that's really worth it in terms of renovating any society that we have. It's in terms of infrastructure, I want you guys to really, it's the water systems, of course, the electrical grids, but also the roadways, roadways, bridges, things like that. In terms of types of infrastructure, I have a list here. And number one, roads and highways. The ASCE rates us, or rates us pretty poorly on this particular aspect of roads and highways. And the ASCE is the American Society for Civil Engineers. 43% of public roadways are in poor condition, and potholes are deteriorating. Pavement and common issue, they're deteriorating. You have deteriorating pavements as well as common issues that lead to really just vehicle damage and accidents in general. In terms of really just to give us some perspective here, I can only imagine what's wrong under the surface. Above the surface, we see these, we see these issues of deteriorating roads and potholes, but we really, in terms of the motivation behind this report was really to go deeper than that. Because these are things that may affect an election when we talk about things that are deteriorating roads and those things. And those issues are things that we expect to be up to standard. Also, bridges is another thing that's listed here. We're going to talk about the in terms of the current status of the 46,000 bridges in the U.S., they are classified as structurally deficient, including critical transportation routes. Or over 46 bridges in the U.S. are classified as structurally deficient, including transportation routes, including critical transportation routes. So we're talking about a first world society that sounds unbelievable, but really when you think about what needs to be renovated at this particular point, I think this is definitely something that we need to worry about. And the 2007 I-35 West Mississippi River Bridge collapse in Minneapolis resulted in 13 deaths and highlighted a dire need for regular inspections and maintenance. In terms of 2007, this wasn't major news for some reason. Definitely did not sure about everybody else, but I didn't hear too much about it. I was in like high school at that time, I believe. Water system. In terms of water systems, it looks like we have water systems that are over 50 years old now, in most cases, and they have frequent leaks and failures. The Flint water crisis, it was a public emergency and exemplified severe consequences of infrastructure neglect. Um, in terms of really the what's happened in Flint, I think we need to start to be more proactive in terms of everything else. I'll go a little bit into detail about the water systems later on. In terms of electrical grids, we'll also go over this later on. But we have aging electrical grids that struggle to meet modern demands. There are more frequent blackouts and inefficiencies. In 2003, there was the Northeast blackout that affected 45 million people and 45 million people in the U.S. and 10 million people in Canada. There's a growing vulnerability of the grid that of course, if you're one of the highest concerning, grid failure is one of the highest concerning one of the things to be highly concerned about in terms of really emergencies in this modern day and age. I'm pretty sure I heard that this is one of the top risks associated with FEMA, and what is the emergency that is FEMA, or the preparing for emergencies in terms of FEMA's role. In terms of public transportation systems, many are outdated and underfunded, leading to service delays and safety concerns, including New York City subway systems. They faced delays, breakdowns, and frustrating commuters. They frustrate commuters, and impact economic productivity. Now, a lot of us, when we talk about, oh, Japan has this, but we don't have X, and they're really more advanced than us. In terms of how our roads should look, I really want people to get more into understanding that, what should a first world society look like in terms of these infrastructures that hold us together, really. In terms of examples of bridges collapse, of infrastructure failures, we have the bridges collapsing. Of course, in 2024, you guys had that wasn't really infrastructure failure, but more of an emergency incident. In terms of the bridge collapse in 2024, in terms of really what's going on in Minneapolis, there's a lot or what's happened in Minneapolis. There was a bridge collapse and lack of maintenance, but it also prompted inspections and repairs. A lot of these major infrastructure failures, they come along with promises in the form of more infrastructure, more inspection, more repairs. More on that later, definitely. One second. Definitely want to write that down. It's, you'd hate to see really what happens in a failing infrastructure in terms of when it's noticed by the public, when something doesn't work to the point of collapse. Investigate. Oh, shit. Sorry, but a lot of people are really in a more passive state when it comes down to this, and they should be in a more active role. Um, and in terms of why this wouldn't be a, something more prevalent to, more, I'll say, while we wouldn't be as up to date in the terms of infrastructure and the terms of really a lot of things, I think we really need to come to terms with the fact that this the politics being really a show and not really addressing the concerns that we really rely upon. And here's collapse. And I also want to talk about the I really, really want to get into the organizations that are on the front lines of carrying out these promises at some point. Definitely. In terms of water contamination incidents, we have the Flint water crisis, of course. And we talked about privatization in terms of what's the element of really turning public water into private hands. The problem, that particular issue is really more prevalent than it seems. In terms of the Flint water crisis, it occurred when the city switched its water source to save money. When you put profit on places like this is what this is. I think I'm more so worried about really what happens when you do that on a scale of really a whole city's infrastructure, a whole city's water source, or what happens there is definitely becomes interesting, or what we don't see, period. In terms of 2003, in terms of electrical grid failure, we talked about 2003, the blackout. That it was really caused by a software bug in an alarm system in Ohio, affecting millions and costing billions in economic losses. In terms of the current status and metrics, like the ASCE, or the Society of Engineers, the American Society of Civil Engineers, they are it's common to get a D or F for us, a D or an F, and it's very, very worrying that is the state of our infrastructure on a regular basis. The frequency of maintenance. In terms of the frequency of maintenance, many infrastructures lack consistent maintenance schedules, and this leads to accelerated water and tear, the incidence of failure. Increasing reports of infrastructure failures highlight the urgency of addressing these issues. I'm not sure, guys, I went around the country around I think it was 2022. So only just a brief. It was brief. I spent a brief amount of time around in the states, in every state. But I think one of the states that really, really stuck out to me was I went to a restaurant where they literally told you, "Hey, look, don't drink this water," and that always stuck out to me. And in terms of how they figured that out, why that wasn't news, it's definitely something to think about. Um, we'll talk more about like like the actual the resources. Um, I know this year or not this year, 2021. I think the latest infrastructure report card that we got from the American Society of Civil Engineers was like a D or something like that. It was ridiculous, and we're doing very poorly in this particular stance to think that hey, maybe we should sell to corporations, because as these things get more expensive, there's less incentive for corporation to fix things in an ideal way. We really should be paying attention to the idea of privatization in general, in combination with a failing infrastructure, more so than most. In terms of the importance, they really highlight public awareness. They talk about how to get involved. We'll go over that a little bit later. In terms of the electrical grid, I really wanted to go in on this. It's an intricate network of power plants, transmission lines, distribution systems, and the grid doesn't work 100% on most of the time. It works according to the work schedule that we have planned out. A lot of it is aging in terms of the adaptation that we're going through as a people. Like, there is no adaptation, or there's not gonna be adaptation that occurs at this, with our infrastructure right now. Many of our electrical grids are decades old or experiencing, near expected lifespans. We have like aging transformers, substations, and power lines that are more prone to a lot of these failures already. But when you add in the fact that we're using more energy than ever, the amount of focus definitely should be, or the amount of pressure on any type of public money needs to be put into infrastructure, definitely. In terms of just some numbers, like the Energy Information Administration reports that 70% of the grids, transmission lines, and transformers are over 25 years old. Very very worrying in terms of, if you think about like my car is, or the cars that I'm seeing now, it's rare to see, a car like under, over 10 years old. You know what I'm saying? There's the increase in demand, the rising use of electronic devices, electrical vehicles, and renewable energy resources. This is stuff that the grid has not adjusted for, in terms of a lot of these being 25 years old. Peak demand projects, or peak demand periods, such as hot summer days when air conditioning use is high. Of course, renewable energy integration. Apparently, like, there's a process, like, translating these energies of from solar or wind to the grid. That also requires like a step, an additional step. And I think that in terms of actually like addressing this particular place, or this particular step, and making renewable energy more likely, we'll have to get really good at that in terms of really how to, truly take sunlight or wind or renewable energy and use it efficiently. Apparently, the operators for grids, they have to balance this this idea of renewable energy, and it's more and more something that we should pay attention to and be aware of, as this is we need to modernize this idea of a grid in general. The grid is increasingly vulnerable to cyber attacks, which can disrupt power supply, widespread outages. Protecting the grid from cyber threats requires ongoing investments in cybersecurity and infrastructure upgrades. We're talking about, of course, when it comes down to this infrastructure right now being modernized, protecting it from cyber attacks. I talked about how it's really become more likely for what we have in terms of what could happen. I think we really need to be more aware of really the idea of a the idea of a major shut off in any way, or a major crash of any sort, or emergency revolving around our electric grid. In terms of government programs and initiatives, we have the bipartisan infrastructure law, which includes funding to go into this particular this grid and building our grid resilience, and also a renewable and energy initiative. In terms of the Department of Energy's grid modernization, we are looking at we're trying to enhance. They're talking about initiatives that really enhance the resilience, and talk about making it more efficient in terms of what we have now. They're talking about integrating smart grid technologies to really adapt to people. In terms of, my mind instantly went to AI in terms of how the adaptation of mass people, really becomes more and more easy. Microgrids and decentralization. This right here is kind of like a point of interest in terms of really how to move forward. We laugh at really what happened in Texas, but I'm really interested in terms of really what we should do moving forward in terms of decentralizing a lot of this. And I think a lot of us are interested in decentralizing in general, but I think power and grids, microgrids, are the future. Examples of grid failures: we got the 2003 Northeast blackout, and that was talking about Canada and actually Northeast America. Southwest blackout of 2011. This was where a single operator in Arizona triggered a massive blackout that affected parts of California and California, Arizona, and Mexico, leaving 2.7 million people without power for up to 12 hours. and the 2021 Texas power crisis. This was, this is, of course, another thing to really be wary of. Um, of course, like, we don't realize what would happen in a situation, but we really, in terms of the importance of really when it came down to that 2021, like the feedback of having a charged phone and what that can do for your life, I think is really instrumental. I really, really, really want to urge people to be prepared. Be prepared in those situations when it comes down to, a, a phone, or a solar charger for your phone is definitely something. Definitely. In terms of the test, we have promises from the government to, as a response from, the Flint, Michigan, and this comes from the EPA. The EPA is really, they're talking about revised requirements and improved communication with the public regarding lead risk. And we're talking infrastructure improvement. And we seen I think it was $65 billion through one of the initiatives, but I'm interested to see if that $65 billion is being ate up in administrative fees or something like that. Definitely something to think about. Think about lead testings. They also promised lead testing in schools and child care program, drinking water grant program. So really, really keeping these guys accountable is important in terms of the infrastructure and the promises that they make. Even being able to overlook infrastructure is definitely something. It shouldn't be possible, because everyone, like, your taxes, like, the idea of 30%, however much comes out of your taxes going to infrastructure. Like infrastructure should be obvious, and it should be well taken care of as a quote unquote first world society. And they have a lot of initiative. They do have some initiatives. In terms of the Get the Lead Out Coalition. There's organizations that are really focused on this. They have a Flint Action and Sustainability team. We stopped hearing about Flint well before Flint was actually fixed, and I want to make sure that people know about, like, this wasn't a priority for many people, and I'm pretty sure that these people still had to pay taxes in one way or another, regardless of whether they received the benefits. They received the cost of living in a first world society without without the benefits. Definitely, it became kind of a standard in terms of tax, in the taxation department. In terms of some ratings that you guys might be interested in, the ASC, if you get an A on the American Society of Engineer or Civil Engineers, you're fit for the future. B is good, you're adequate for now. C is mediocre and requires attention. D is poor, and that means at risk. And F is failing, unfit for purpose. Commonly rated infrastructure categories. Our typical grade is D. For roads, for bridges, our typical grade is C. For drinking water, our typical grade is a C minus. In terms of the aging pipes and mains and water breaks, water main breaks, we see that. There's inadequate investment in our infrastructure upgrades. For the wastewater, we're graded a D plus. Aging sewer systems, frequent overflows, and insufficient treatment capacity. Definitely. In terms of our energy, we're C minus. We're our electrical. We just talked about electrical grid infrastructure. We experience frequent blackouts, lack of modernization to meet energy demands, and in terms of of course, we can see when we're failing at when our roads are in a state of disrepair. But in terms of our water and our energy, it definitely makes you think about when does this become a priority to turn a D into anything above. I think we seen Flint fail outright before anything was done, and even then it took a long time. In terms of transit, we're looking at a D minus. We have outdated systems, underfunding, and frequent breakdowns. And we're talking about inadequate coverage for growing urban population. Our rail is a B. In terms of the freight rail is generally in good condition. Passenger rail legs. Passenger rail lags due to insufficient and outdated infrastructure. So our freight rail is pretty good. It gets the best rating in terms of actually getting above a C. Definitely interesting to me in terms of really this reliance based on reliant on what we can rely on, what we can't rely on. We don't use rails on a typical basis, on a regular basis, but this is at a B, and we need to I think this is minimum, honestly, for first world society. Parks and recreations are D plus. We got underfunding, and deteriorating facilities, inadequate maintenance. Schools, typical grade is a D plus. We're talking about aging buildings, inadequate facilities, and significant funding gaps for necessary improvements. I'm pretty big. I'm an advocate. And I'm in in terms of holistic education. This is in terms of a D, really we need to be rated an F. Specifically a D. They call it a D plus, but we should be rated F in terms of really our ability to handle school and education in general. It's in terms of aviation, our typical grade is a D. Aviation's definitely something that when it comes down to the airport infrastructure, it's also aging. Capacity constraints, need for modernization, and handling for increased passenger and cargo volumes. In terms of nonprofits and initiatives to really be on the lookout for, we do have the infrastructuresusa.org. they are, their impact. They have an initiative to really get the public informed in several ways, or at least that's the advertisement here. In terms of American Public Works Association, we have .net, apwa.net, and they offer training programs, certifications, conferences to significantly improve the skills of public work professionals. Natural Resources Defense Council, or the NRDC.org. They're trying to safeguard the earth and its people, plants, systems, natural systems, things like that. And the Waterkeeper Alliance, or waterkeeper.org, is a global network of grassroots leaders protecting everyone's right to clean water. In terms of Fix Our Roads Coalition, fixourroads.com, lobbied for, and they actively partake in lobbying for increased state and federal funding for roads repair and maintenance. Rebuild Together, they mobilize volunteers and resources to repair homes and community facilities. Get the Lead Out Coalition, we talked about that earlier, but in terms of increased and stronger regulation around lead pipe replacements, they're actively seeking. It seems like these organizations are, really on the front lines. Whether they are well funded or not is definitely something to pay attention to. Let's see. In terms of the difference between what makes these organizations impactful, focus, mission, and clear goals, public awareness and advocacy, community engagement, expertise and credibility, and collaborative effort, innovation, solutions, and education, of course. When it comes down to the idea of really a failing infrastructure, or an infrastructure that has literally grades itself in terms of the engineers grading us a D, I think that is something that requires more attention than it's getting, and it appears that this isn't really obvious to our politicians in any way, in terms of our politicians or our leaders to really let us know. But for some reason, we are aware that things are messed up. We're just like, for some reason, the funds to fix things are very, very limited, or limited in terms of this community engagement as portion of things. With that being said, this is your report. Like and subscribe for more information, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.